Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Nana Gyesie, transformational coach here at Inner Mileage, as well as your shamanic guide. And what we do is help people understand limiting self-beliefs rooted in trauma, overcome them, so they can live their best resonant lives here. Today we're going to talk about the anatomy of fear, why narcissistic abuse trains you to abandon yourself and how to transcend it for good. The anatomy of fear, how narcissistic abuse trains you to abandon yourself and how to transcend it for good. So let's start with the descriptive fear. And it's important to realize that fear is not the problem. The problem is our interpretation of it. Again, fear is not a weakness, it's intelligence in overdrive. And for empaths, especially those who survive narcissistic abuse, fear becomes the GPS of a distorted identity. One shaped not by your essence, but by control, gaslighting, and betrayal. So importantly, this is not a video about becoming fearless. It's about becoming fluent in fear. And we'll explore how fear functions biologically, historically, psychologically, and so on, and map how narcissistic systems use fear to distort the empath's inner compass, and decode how to rewire your nervous system, realign your soul contract, and walk without fear, without abandoning your sensitivity. So let's get into the neurology and biology of fear. You see, fear is not just in your head. It isn't. It's in your body. It's in your synapses and in your memory network. And fear begins in the amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection system. The hypothalamus initiates the fear, flight, freeze, fawn cascade, engaging your sympathetic nervous system, which creates cortisol into your bloodstream. Your heart rate increases, blood rushes to your extremities, and then your higher reasoning, your prefrontal cortex, shuts down. You stop dreaming, you start surviving. In the context of narcissistic abuse, narcissistic abusers intentionally trigger this system by keeping you in a state of uncertainty and vigilance. Intermittent reinforcement, love bombing followed by cold withdrawal conditions your body to associate safety with fear. And you become addicted to the nervous system roller coaster. This is not your weakness. It's neurological entrainment, pattern recognition, effectively. And for empaths, you're wired to detect energetic shifts and emotional undercurrents. This makes you the perfect target as well as the perfect healer. See, your fear responses may not even be yours. They may be absorbed from those around you. And when you look even deeper, let's go into the historical weaponization of fear and how it leads to gaslighting. So fear has always been used to maintain power, individually, socially, in a group. And this is from religious dogma to narcissistic households. Fear is a control strategy of the insecure. So in history, fear was institutionalized. Religious regimes demonized inner knowing. They really did. Colonialism used fear to destroy identity and self-trust. And in some regimes, fear was embedded in language architecture and even in silence. In narcissistic families, this historical pattern is reenacted. Love is conditional, silence is punishment, truth is manipulated, and your reality is invalidated. For the empath raised in or drawn into narcissistic families, me, internalize the fear of visibility. Speaking your truth feels like treason. You fear success because your success may trigger abandonment. And you fear certain boundaries because you are punished for having them. And the truth bomb is your fear is not irrational. It is a learned survival behavior that no longer serves your expansion. Now, if we go into the epigenetics and inheritance of fear, you realize that fear is not always personal. It's often ancestral. It can be coded in the body as intergenerational trauma. In fact, from a study done by Yehuda in 2001, they found that Holocaust survivors and descendants of enslaved people show altered cortisol regulation. So there's more of that cortisol, the fear chemical. Then there's heightened fear sensitivity in the amygdala, right, in the fear center, and heritable trauma-based behavior that's passed on from parent to child, from parent to child. And narcissistic abuse often activates these inherited scripts. You may be re-experiencing unprocessed grief, shame, or terror from your lineage. And for empaths, you were born with a spiritual assignment to transmute fear that was never yours. This is part of what we call ancestral alchemy. You're transforming the pain of generations into wisdom, power, and peace, you see. Now, when you think about fear of the empath's identity, right, narcissistic environments train empaths to abandon themselves for survival. Therefore, fear becomes your identity architecture. And children in narcissistic families learn early, if I express myself, I will be punished. If I'm too happy, they'll sabotage me. If I'm too sad, I will be blamed. This leads to a fawn response, which is hyper-pleasing, self-silencing, walking on eggshells. And the empath confuses hypervigilance with love. The result is you don't just fear conflict, you fear authenticity. And you don't just fear rejection, you fear existence outside the script. The key truth here is this is not who you are, it's who you had to be, and now is the time to come home. So when we go into a spiritual and esoteric perspective, so you think about fear as a spiritual threshold, every initiation, every spiritual expansion is preceded by fear. Every awakening, if you may. Fear is the veil before rebirth. If you can understand this, you will begin to see fear as a friend because it leads you to the other shore. In Buddhism, for example, fear arises when we cling to the illusion of permanence. And this notion of impermanence is a fact of life. In the Kabbalah, fear disrupts the divine flow of Shefa, abundance. See? In Hermetic traditions, or in Hermeticism, fear is a distortion of vibration. It pulls you out of harmony with universal law. And in ancient Egypt, I've often made this reference, the soul was weighed against a feather, and your fear had to be metabolized to move on. In other words, at the end of the day, if your fear was heavier than the feather, there was a problem, right, for you to address. For empaths, you realize that you're a threshold walker. You feel fear because you're expanding. The narcissist tried to collapse your spiritual identity, and fear became the gate they locked around your light. But now you have the key, because fear is not the end, it's the beginning of awakening. So you think about fear in the digital matrix. Modern fear now is monetized, and you are being programmed through digital architecture to stay small and scared. For example, social media algorithms reward fear-based content, and your nervous system is hacked by clickbait, outrage cycles, and doom scrolling. You've heard the terms. And you're constantly being told who to fear, what to fear, when to fear. Narcissists do the same thing. They program your attention toward them, toward crisis, and toward chaos. And for empaths, it's important to reclaim your timeline because fear is a form of distortion. It anchors you to an unhealed past or an imagined doom. Presence is the portal, embodiment is your rebellion, sovereignty is your superpower. So when you think about how you transcend this, right? It starts with awareness. Track your fear somatically and ask, where does it come from? Where does it live in the body? Is this a boundary or a prophecy? And if I can be of help to you, type transform in the comment section or let us know about your experiences with fear. Another approach is somatic alchemy, using breath work to reset the vagus nerve, EFT tapping for old scripts, and trauma-informed movement to your free states. Then there's the cognitive recoding, using narrative coaching and therapy and journaling to understand what is this fear trying to protect, what would my higher self say to this version of me, see? Then there's ancestral resolution, rituals for releasing inherited fear. And then finally, spiritual reorientation by anchoring to your purpose. See, fear is the loudest when you're on the edge and the verge of an evolution. So ask yourself, what future self is this fear trying to prevent me from becoming? So you realize that, in summary, fear is not your enemy. It's the echo of your unclaimed power. It's the ghost of every version of you that stayed silent when truth was screaming. To the empath still healing from narcissistic abuse, your fear was real, your pain was valid, but your story is not over. You were not designed to be small. You were forged to walk through fear and turn it into fire. And that's what we do here at Weaponized Coaching. We don't bypass fear, we translate it, we transform it, and we guide you on how to alchemize it into fuel for your soul's mission. Because when you walk toward fear with reverence, you walk back into yourself. If this resonated with you, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Again, type transform if it can be of help to you. And remember, there's absolutely no one like you. Fear comes to keep you small, to block your full manifestation of your true self. And your engagement with fear directly is what releases you from it. See you around. Send in peace.